Welcome to O-Talkin' with Dave. Here's Dave.
Hey, how we doing out there? I hope you are fantastic. I am top shelf myself and ready to go today. I'm going to be warning. I'm going to be a little philosophical today. Yeah, I get that way. You know, usually I did a philosophical post the other day on social media, and it's, I don't know, something about kindness. And then I couldn't stand it. I just said, okay, back to my crude humor. I have to tell a booger joke to get the taste back in my mouth. But today I want to talk about a topic that, I don't know, it guides me. It makes me, when I'm at my best, I will be a little more composed, a little more thoughtful, a little less, I don't know, impulsive, something like that. And, you know, some people could call it the circle theory. Some would say karma, what goes around comes around. We reap what we sow. Yeah, all that's in there. Yeah, it's in there somewhere. Yeah, I've got a podcast coming up. The golden rule is crap. Yeah, I can't. Some of these I couldn't put out while my mom was still alive. She would jump through this microphone and grab me by the throat. But I want to talk about this one because I said when I'm at my best. That's not all the time. And I have a lot of friends that are around me, and I'm such a flawed individual. They will remind me from time to time. Yeah, and Gary and Randy. Yeah, you guys, you're really good to keep me in check. But the whole premise behind what I'm going to talk about today is how we behave, how we treat people, sometimes how we think. Who's keeping track of that? You believe somebody is? Is it karma? You're good to people. People will be good to you. Good things will happen to you. You know, in religions, different religions, and we'll talk to those in a minute. It is, you know, you reap what you sow. And I believe it, man. I believe it. There's a lot to be said for feeling good about yourself. There's a lot to be said for treating people in a kind way. And, you know, that word gets on my nerves sometimes because there's a bunch of definitions. But when you need something, and you will, what do you draw from? Is it like an account? And the way I want to do this, instead of bank accounts, put something in a savings account, I want to talk about it like buckets, okay? And I'll throw this analogy out there so you can picture these buckets. But what I would like to do is talk about each category is a bucket. And when you do these things, these acts of generosity or acting the way you should in different respects, and I'll name the buckets, you're putting some nice cold water in there. And where that comes from, I remember my granddad, we would work on the farm, and his he didn't even have a thermos, but my grandmother would put him a jug of water. And they would go to the ice plant or wherever, and they would have these big chunks of ice in their ice box. I mean, it sounds like Amish people. They weren't Amish, but they lived very simply. Well, she would get an ice pick and chop off a big chunk of ice and put it down in that water, and then wrap it in like aluminum foil or a rag or something and put it in a bucket. And then when he got hot, he would unscrew the top of that big mason jar and take a drink of that cold water. And he worked hard. I mean, this is back when he was farming. He was in the fields working in that, and she'd pack him a lunch or whatever. When then later on, they would have a bucket of water, and it had a dipper in it. And we would go in there, and you get a dipper. I had another grandfather who had a bucket and a dipper, and that wasn't water, by the way. But anyway, you get that dipper and just get some of that nice water, and sometimes they put ice in it, and it would be cold. So whenever you needed something, you need a drink of water, it's in that bucket, and you knew it. That's the analogy I want to make today. So we can label some of the buckets. This is a scratch, not a pick. We can label some of these. I mean, you look at different areas where we're supposed to be virtuous. Generosity. What is that? What is generosity? Be generous. Hey, generosity doesn't mean just money. It's time. It's whatever resources you have. It's a kind word. The whole thing behind that is if you're generous with somebody, you're giving them something. Maybe you're giving, it could be a homeless person. It could be a friend. It could be money. It could be clothes. It could be whatever. It's yours. You don't have to give it, but you're generous. That's putting a little water in that generosity bucket. Compassion. Just understanding, a lot of these would fall under empathy, but just understanding the suffering of somebody else and having sympathy for that. Having an open heart. We've all suffered, and if we haven't, we will to some degree, but having compassion for that person. Can you imagine being emotionally isolated and just suffering without someone giving you compassion? So when you give that compassion, you're putting a little dipper of water in that compassion bucket. I hear a lot, growing up Baptist, not just Baptist, Southern Baptist. Giddy up, King James only, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd verse Baptist. Give me some. Well, I learned early grace and mercy. Grace and mercy. And I learned, I'll never forget it, the difference in grace and mercy. Grace is getting something you don't deserve. Unearned favor of some sort. Maybe somebody's forgiven you and you don't really deserve that. Maybe you're being accepted into something. You don't really deserve that. Maybe your bucket's empty, but they let you in anyway. And the whole thing behind that is you're receiving that. And maybe it's a second chance. Maybe, like I said, it's forgiveness or whatever. But that way you're not being judged too harshly. You don't really deserve this, but you're given that. That's grace. You got a grace bucket out there. There are people out there that you're going to give something they don't really deserve it. That's grace. And then who are we to decide, by the way? More on that. Then mercy. I love mercy because mercy is somebody giving you something, not giving you something you do deserve. Oh, that's big. Ooh, my goodness. How many things did I get away with? That's why if I got a whipping when growing up for something that, come on, it's not that big a deal, I just shut my mouth because they didn't catch me doing that, and that. And it's true in my adult life too. I'm paying for this. You know what? I'm gonna hush up. Mercy. And you show mercy to other people. You know what? You could hold a grudge and hold that against them and punish them in some way. Well, the bucket, you can knock a little hole in your bucket too. You got some cold water in that mercy bucket. You can give that away by not showing mercy. But also when you show mercy, put another dipper in there. So grace, you're getting something you don't deserve. Mercy, you're not getting something you do deserve. Woo! 2 big buckets there. And then the one, I struggle. Ooh, Lord help me, I struggle. The patience bucket. God knows, I think my patience bucket is a thimble. I wish I had a huge 55-gallon drum full of patience. It's just and by that I'm talking about the whole capacity to tolerate something, a delay, suffering, without getting angry. I can tolerate it sometimes, but I justify my anger because I'm impatient. I'm doing better. I am doing better. I could tell you more, but I'm going to be running against the clock on this podcast. But I am doing better. Give me some grace here. So patience. When you're patient with someone, when you're patient with a situation, Other people have got their life going on too. Frustration, abandonment. When you are getting frustrated and angry and just abandoning a situation because you don't have patience and you don't consider how that affects somebody else, that's not good, man. You're draining your bucket. However, when you do the opposite, you're putting a little more water. Cold, cool, clear water in that bucket. Yeah. Humility. That's another one. Modesty is it's said a lot, but that humility, understanding, patience and humility are not back to back here by coincidence. You know what Mama told me? The learning curves on these are tough. Humility. Don't get too big for your britches. You need other people. Yeah, you could probably do that by yourself. It wouldn't be as well. You probably wouldn't do it as well. Plus, they need to help you to help them out. And a lot of reasons that people do things by themselves is because they can say, look what I did. I did that all by myself. Look how good I am. Whoo, you're draining your bucket. And trust me, a dry humility bucket is not a good thing. No, because sometimes you're going to need someone else to show you some humility. You're going to need a drink. You don't want a dry bucket of humility, that's for sure. Finding yourself alone, unsupported, failing, desperate situation, that will humble you. That will humble you. And in that humility, you're going to need a sip. Trust me, I've been there. It ain't good. It ain't good. And then a lot of things, I'll just say the word reason. The ability to think and understand and use judgment. I think that is very important. And we get older, this gets enhanced because we've got more life experiences. But having that bucket of reason, it also helps you build bridges. It goes back to maybe some of the things you've done in the past that you shouldn't have. And you can ask forgiveness. And hopefully you've got some forgiveness out there in a bucket that somebody's granted you or you've built up for yourself. Sometimes you need to give grace or mercy. And that reason helps with that. Sometimes it's emotional. But without reason, you can have chaos. You can have a lot of scorekeeping. You can have a lot of resentment, given and taken. Greed, all sorts of things. But what helps with this is a calm wisdom. I think that's a good way to define reason. Let's just be calm and think this through. And what buckets does this involve? Forgiveness, humility, grace, mercy. I don't know. That's why that reason is a bucket all its own. Maybe you pour a little from other buckets into that. Make a stew, if you will. And then there's others. Faithfulness. Faithfulness. And I don't just mean in relationships. I mean being loyal. Husband-wife relationship. I'm being loyal. Being trustworthy. Doing what you say you're going to do. I'm telling you, man, there's been a lot of times I have lost money. I may have lost friends. I've upset people because I kept commitments just because I said I was going to do it. I'm in a band and we play, we got bigger than certain venues, but we already had those booked. We honored those. For half the pay, it was so much trouble, but we said we'd be there and we did that because we were faithful to our word. And I believe that helped us in future gigs. I really do. But in personal lives, it's the same thing. Dude, you can trust me. You can trust. If I say I'll do it, I will do it. I've got a pretty full book in that regard. And so when something happens and I don't make it, I can take a pretty good drink out of that bucket I've built up. And by that I mean people will, okay, something's wrong. He's never done this before. He's never lied to me. He's never done this. He's not, my goodness, He didn't kill that guy. He doesn't have a parking ticket. He's built this. He's built this up. I may have killed the guy. I'm serious. Just keep that between yourself. I did shoot Miss Tally with a BB gun. Anyway, hope. Hope and faithfulness are close, but I've always said a lot of people have faith in their faith, meaning, well, I always stick to it and I always believe in it, so I'm just going to believe in my belief, and I believe I'll do that. Okay, it needs to be deeper than that. Sometimes hope is the same way. Hope is not a strategy. Ask any businessman. What do you back that up with? But hope is more speaking encouragement. The possibility of things being okay based on other things. Sustaining someone by giving them hope. That's a big dipper in your bucket if you're giving that. And I think one of the biggest ones, forgiveness. True forgiveness. Not, it's all right, man. Yeah, I'll get that guy. Yeah, wait till the next time he needs me. That's not true forgiveness. And I think forgiveness in this case is different than mercy. Forgiveness is about taking care of yourself first. Mercy, yeah, you deserve this, and I'm not going to give it to you. Forgiveness is more like, I got to take care of the way I feel about you in my heart. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to judge you anymore. And this may not be a conversation I'm having with this fictitious person to my right here. Forgiveness is something you're doing in your heart. You need a bucket full of forgiveness. You know why? Because you're going to need to be forgiven. You're going to need other people to do that in their heart. See, I told you this was going to be philosophical today. I'm telling you, man. So you've got all these buckets out there. Life is a circle, reaping and sowing. And you can't, to go to a banking analogy, you can't withdraw more than you have in there. Trust me. My wife thinks just because she has checks, she's got money. Who writes checks anymore? That's an old joke. However, you can't drink from a dry bucket. So each time you extend one of these many things, and there's many more, it's goodwill. It's all of these things, all these labels we've talked about. And the more you give, the more you get. The supply is more plentiful. Now, I know what you're thinking, and trust me, it's not, okay, there's a dipper. I got a dipper in there. When I need that, I'm going to go back and it's not 1-to-1. My goodness, I have had a bucket full of something before, and I needed a lot. I needed it, and I didn't get it. All right, well, I'm still there. It's coming. That's where your faith and your belief and how strong your consciousness around being a good person, what goes around comes around. Yeah, somebody's controlling the time. Something is controlling the time, and there's a balance. So it's not completely selfish. I forgave you. You have to forgive me. Yep. I forgave you for eating half my sandwich during your break. So you should forgive me for running off with your wife and stealing your dog. Come on. What I'm saying, and you know that, what I'm saying is it's that whole give and take. Don't keep score. Do it because it's the right thing. And I believe you're going to get what you need. You're going to get what you need. Honestly, the more you give, the less you're going to need. Because I don't think you're going to be in a situation where you're going to need a lot of this stuff. Is frantically. Have you ever been thirsty to the point to where you thought you were going to die? And I'm not talking about in the middle of a Pilates class. No, I don't think I have. I've been dehydrated. I've probably been close to heat stroke before to where I needed that. But I mean, it's critical to the point to where you have to have a drink of water. I don't know. I know people that have. What would you do without that? And so we don't want it to get to that point. All right. Pretty heavy stuff. Do I need to take a break? Hey, let's have a sip of Cool Clear Diet Mountain Dew. They're not a sponsor, but they could be. So you may be thinking, Dave, this really doesn't apply to me. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It's universal. It applies to everybody. And you may not believe it. You may not. You may not believe a lot of the stuff Dave pontificates about him when he talks about himself in the third person. But I'm telling you, I'll give you a few reasons why I believe this applies to everybody. We're human. There is something built in to humans. It's a built-in reciprocity. 4 syllables. Reciprocity, meaning it's give and take. We know what give and take is. How many times in your lifetime have you said or heard, "You owe me, dude"? Favors. Somebody's keeping score. Favors. We're wired for give and take. You know, you give kindness or patience or generosity or any of these things. You know the phrase, you've made a deposit in their emotional bank account. They know they owe you. He's always so nice to me. He needs a ride. You know, he's walking in the rain. I'm going to pick him up. Yeah. Would you do it anyway? Maybe. Okay. In this analogy, if I'm walking in the rain and you pick me up, I'm drinking from my own bucket. Sure, he gets credit for that, but there's something at play there, and I believe it across the board. I could literally take 1 point and fill an hour full of stories, real stories and analogies. But it's just humans. We're built that way. Give and take. Give and take. Also, another reason why this affects everybody, it's part of our social network. You don't live alone. I mean, the most introverted person in the world has some type of community. We need it. We have to have it. You may not see people face to face, but people are online. Usually you work with, you have some type of social network. Give me examples where you don't, and I can probably talk to how this would still apply. But we need that. We need to belong to something. Even left-handed bricklaying ambidextrous nuns who have birthdays in March probably have a support group somewhere. So there's a community. All right? So depositing these virtues or doing the right thing, no matter who they are, wanting to help, really wanting to help or make somebody feel better, that strengthens that relationship, and we want to do it. We want to help somebody out. Sometimes we want to help somebody out so we can brag about how we helped somebody out. Still, the help was there. You got some humidity. You got some humility thirst coming. However, a church, a workplace, a neighborhood, any type of group, it's out there. And as long as people are interacting, boom, you've got it. I love those commercials where the guy is supposedly treating new homeowners who are becoming their parents. It is great. Whoever does those, that's fantastic. But you've got that sense of community. You need to connect. You need to do this. We learn it from our parents. We learn it as children. My pets learned it. We took them to a doggy daycare yesterday to give us a break, give our other dog a break, and just let them run crazy. They separated them, and they made all friends in 2 different rooms. And then they swapped them. Boom. They built community. They need that. If they need it, we do. That's why, another reason why this applies to everyone. Another reason why it applies to everyone is because it protects us against that isolation. No one wants to be isolated. Sometimes you want to be alone. Oh, absolutely. But isolation, I'm talking about the kind of isolation that makes you bitter. Ugh. It's horrible. And I've known bitter people. Usually when you dig in, there's a reason why, and they're a pretty good person in there. But, when you give grace and patience and mercy and all of these things, it protects your heart. Yeah. I mean, I've had people who, they give anonymously. And that's a great way to do it. But they don't want the credit for it. They give anonymously. Why do they do that? They don't want anybody to know. Because they're generous. That might be the most bitter person in the world. You don't know. I've heard people complain about people, and then you find out later after they die what all they did, and you had no idea. That's because you're not. It's not up to you to keep score. Human nature is to do those things when you can to protect your heart from bitterness. A hard heart. Yeah, some people you can't judge people. How many times have you seen that? People are fighting a battle you have no idea. They're also doing things, noble things. All these buckets. A lot of people that you've written off, bitter people, nasty people in your mind, their buckets are full. And some of yours, they're either leaky or they're dry. So but it's what we do. We don't like isolation, so we'll do things to prevent that bitterness. Because bitterness isolates you. Bitterness is such a strong word, and think about it. What are you bitter about? Resentful, whatever, but bitter. That really hits it. What are you soured on? We need to deal with that. You really do. Because bitterness leads to isolation. Yeah. And the habit of fighting through that and doing something for yourself, nobody has to know about it. That keeps you grounded. And I don't care what your beliefs are. In the craziest parts of the world where people have never heard good news of any kind, even in the animal world, you have those times when the most dominant creature will reach out to an infant or a smaller thing of their race, or when something's hungry, it will share or allow things to happen. If it happens in the animal kingdom, you don't think humans are the same way? Sometimes we don't want to think that, but it's true. And when you give up that bitterness, you're putting water in a bucket that you're going to need a drink of at some point. Yeah. And so then you get past some of these horrible people we're talking about and just say, us, cool folks, the in crowd. We're sitting at the cool kid table right here. It helps us grow. It helps us stronger. When we practice humility, it's not just to fill our bucket up. It's because we need that. It makes us a better person. Personal growth makes us stronger. When we use reason to think back through things. Hey, cool, clear water. Plus it makes us stronger, a better person, makes us tougher. And it allows us to give more compassion. Emotionally, we're stronger because we've done that. We know how good it feels. We will show more self-control. I won't yell at the guy who towed my truck yesterday. I was technically parked wrong, and the HOA made him tow my truck. I didn't rail on that guy. He's just doing his job. I didn't rail on the HOA. I said, hey, tell me how I can keep this from happening again. And they both were shocked. They thought, oh, this guy's going to go nuts. And some of you are surprised I didn't. My wife is surprised I didn't. I was preparing this podcast, and I realized, you know what? It's not their fault. Why am I going to dump on them? I can't afford a hole in my patience and humility bucket. They're running low as it is. Makes me tougher, makes me calmer. I use that reason. It gives me faith in myself, and those people, I'm sure they appreciate it. So part of it is maturity. And when we get older and more mature, act like it. Even if you feel like you're justified. Hey, does that apply to everybody? I think so. And then I think another reason it applies to everybody. I think universally we believe in cause and effect, right? I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what you believe in any other way. I think you believe what you put out there, you're going to get back. If you're a nasty individual, you're going to get nastiness back. If you commit crimes, you're probably going to have to do the time. You know, if you're nice to people, people are probably going to be nice to you. You're still going to have the exceptions. We've talked about this a lot. However, cause and effect. If then. You know what? If I go skating on my 60th birthday party, and I fall, which I'm probably going to do 2 times, I'm probably going to be sore for a while. Cause and effect. True story. So whether you call it karma, energy, legacy, reputation, or just truth of consequences, I think it fits. I think what we give affects what we get back. Thus, the buckets. You know? I believe that. I believe it with all my heart. I pause just hoping you get it because I can't see your faces. I can't see your forehead all wrinkled up. That's why I like to do these face to face. So, I mean, you've got tons of things. And a lot of times people will do things for show. You know, they flash their money and give it to somebody, whatever. You know, you can, so many times, you've seen it come around. Artists helping young artists. I love it when they talk about somebody's on stage and they say, 10 years ago, I was sitting right where that little girl's sitting. And somebody gave me a chance and blah, blah, blah. Some people are doing you remember the ice bucket challenge? People would do that, and it was for ALS. A lot of people didn't realize that. ALS is a horrible disease. And, anything that can raise awareness. Did pouring a bucket of ice water on you do anything? Well, it raised awareness, and people started donating. So just making people aware of this, they would find out more about it, and they would give money. You don't know who gave the money. You don't know who gave the most. A wonderful person, and if I ever heard anything really bad about her, it upset me because I've actually met her. But Dolly Parton, she does so much. She does so much, and no one ever knows. She doesn't pick a side politically. She tries not to be controversial, although she can. Don't get off color with her. She'll get right there with you. But she's done so much for kids. You can look at many things. People that are adults now, they look back at things that she did years ago when they were a kid, and just around childhood literacy. Do you think of that when you think of Dolly? She's done so much, and people say, yeah, well, she can. She's rich. Yeah, there's a lot of people doing stuff and she doesn't have to. And I'm not lifting her up as be like Dolly. I'm just saying people that don't have to do this, why do they do it? A lot of them get stuff out of it. I've heard some really strong testimonials from metal guys. They talk about something and they get teared up. A lot of people when they tour, they see homeless people or they see, people that are homeless. Don't put that moniker on them, but somebody's struggling, and they help them out. And I've seen them get really emotional. You look at that metal guy up there who's screaming and hollering, and you can't understand it, and he's yeah, you put him in a box. You judge him. Yeah, be careful. He's got buckets too. So then you got different. I love to see people give up their seat on a subway for an older person, or on a rental car bus, or wherever. People just reaching out and helping it. It's there's the old saying, if you're negative, when you go into a room and you're looking for crooked pictures, you're gonna find them. The same is true if you're positive. Look for those good things. You'll notice people being kind. You'll notice people holding doors for people. It's everywhere. And you don't do it to put water in your bucket. Because if you do, you may put a little bit of water in. You do it because you're a good person. That's the right thing to do. It's humanity. These buckets, you don't have to physically do it. that bucket is getting populated, you know, covering somebody's shift. You know, somebody's having a tough time doing something to help them. You know, I've seen people pay for other people's groceries. I've seen people pay for the person behind them in the drive-through. All this kind of stuff. It's cool. You know, teachers so underfunded, doing stuff for their students out of their pocket. All this stuff helps. And then even you know, a lot of the stuff you don't even know about. Of course, our society loves to talk about the opposite. You know, people who are being hypocritical. You would have thought Ellen DeGeneres had a 55-gallon drum full of kindness bucket, right? Turns out that puppy was empty, you know? You got those people who want to hoard the credit, who want to keep you down, who want to demean you so that you don't get the credit for that. That comes back. The challenge with these things I'm talking about now is other people want to keep score. Other people want to keep score. You know, when my truck got towed yesterday, I could have said, well, what about that guy? He's parked wrong too. Well, that doesn't help. Let's take care of me. That human nature kind of kicks in, though. You know, people who burn bridges, you know, they treat people horribly. You better be careful how you treat people, especially at work. It's not especially at work, but at work, my goodness, in today's mergers and acquisitions, you may be working for that guy. You know, he works for you. You treat him like crap. Now he comes back. You're working for him. Woo! You're gonna need a few buckets. You're gonna need a long drink of water. And then you see different things. People who get famous and they get to a certain point and then they snub fans, or you got the person who never shows up. You always invite him and stuff like that. You know, all of that stuff. Don't worry. Don't keep score. Don't even think about other people's buckets. You can't drink from someone else's bucket. You can't poke holes in theirs either. If you do, you got problems of your own. So that's part of it. So how are these things connected? I said I'd talk about religion. I don't want to talk about it a lot, but this is the reason I'm going to talk about it is it's not tied to a religion. Stoicism. Anybody know what Stoicism is? Marcus Aurelius wrote a bunch of stuff, I guess. I have read the Meditations. And he says kindness is invincible, but only when it's sincere. Hello. That's why you can't fake a dipper full of cold water into your bucket because you're not putting it in there. But even that stoicism, one other thing he wrote was, people long to have people remember them well, fond memories. He said, these people aren't going to live long, in the grand scheme of things. And when they die, their memories of you are gone with them. Do something because it's the right thing to do. Stoics, they emphasize patience, meaning accept what you can't control. Pretty good, right? Also, logic over emotion. Don't have the highs too high or the lows too low. Let's stay right here. My highs are high. My lows are pretty low. So I'm not stoic by any means. But also they talk about humility. Knowing your limits. Knowing you're not but your time here. Give compassion and grace and mercy. These are Greeks. These people believed everything that I've said now, probably not the way I said it. They're not Southern Baptists. Nuh-uh. Heck no. Then you've got the humanist. Modern humanism. That philosophy. That human dignity and reason and compassion and ethics without needing any divine intervention. These are humanists. Humanists, they celebrate, all the things that we just talked about. The compassion, ethics, reason, big on reason, mercy. It's all about humans and humans flourishing. The idea that what you give is what you build. That fits humanism right there. In the Humanist Manifesto, one thing they say is the highest ethical life is one where we actively promote the well-being of others. That fits. Maybe instead of a bunch of buckets, they just have one big vat. It's the same principle. Yeah. Then you've got the existential people. Woo! Ha ha ha! Yeah. Life has no meaning. Life has no meaning. We create meaning through the choices and actions we make, but life, it has no meaning. Yeah. And the connection to this is, though, giving grace and generosity is a conscious choice to define yourself positively in a chaotic world. Life has no meaning. This is a chaotic world. But if you're generous and have grace in these buckets I'm talking about, that's how you define yourself. That's how you distinguish yourself differently from this chaos. That's close. Yeah. You have an account, and it's built based on the meaningful acts that you do, because life has no meaning. You do these things even if you don't have to. I don't know why I'm doing this. I think it's the word existential that made me do this. So one of the Jean-Paul Sartre, I think is the way you say it, he says, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Okay, so it's about building that up. Then let's go to Buddha. I look a lot like Buddha sometimes. I'm bald and portly, and I don't sit that way. Last time I sat crisscross applesauce, it took 3 people to get me up. However, Buddha is a non-theistic approach to this. And a lot of times when I talk, I've had many people come up to me because I'm live and let live. Let's treat people right. And it's a lot to be said for feeling good about yourself and stuff like that. People have said, wow, you sound Buddhist. If I didn't know how you talked, you'd sound Buddhist. Southern Buddhist. I'm Southern Buddhist, I guess. I don't know. Do they immerse or sprinkle? I don't know what they do. Okay, sorry. Back to it. Deep subject. I need to lighten it up a little bit. But the whole thing around Buddhism is compassion, patience, mindfulness, letting go of selfish desires. Is that not what we're talking about? Bucket. And so the whole thing with this is, although technically spiritual, many Buddhists approach compassion and mercy as just a universal truth, not religious at all. It's just how we act. Giving without expectation of getting something back is considered healthy to Buddhists. There's no reward for doing that, and there's no reward for suffering. That's just because you suffer doesn't mean you're going to get a reward. Okay. All right. If your compassion does not include yourself, it's incomplete. I love that. You've got to be compassionate with yourself. You got to forgive yourself. I don't know how much you get put in a bucket for that, but you got to forgive yourself. I love that. And then you've got just a couple more. You got pragmatism. That's American philosophy. Yeah, the whole thing is practical results. Just being practical about something, being pragmatic. The connection is a gift. You build a gift through generosity and patience and reason. And so that's going to produce tangible benefits for you. So it's almost giving for selfish reasons. But however, what are you doing? You're building stronger relationships. You're getting tougher. You're having better outcomes because you care about the outcome. All right, I want a cold drink of water. It's practical to give these things because they create measurable good. And somebody that's pragmatic, it's got to make sense to them. It's not just morals. It's, hey, I want to be able to measure the good. Act as if what you do makes a difference, and it does. William James said that, the well-known pragmatist. Okay, what's wrong with that? It's going to help somebody. The outcome is good. So, you've got, the reason I bring this up is I don't want you to think it is a Christian thing. Look at all these religions. I did my research here. I've said words I've never said before. So, but the summary here is without religion, even without religion, natural cause and effect. It enhances emotional and social intelligence. It creates tangible benefits like loyalty and peace and, my goodness, resilience. You're gonna be tougher because you're gonna make it through a lot of stuff. You're gonna cause yourself maybe some suffering that you didn't have to because you're giving. Maybe something you need. You may be emptying a bucket for somebody and hoping something fills it back up. But all this, it builds meaning. And I think we need meaning. A lot of us in a situation where we feel like we don't matter. And so that's why I want to talk a little bit. I've talked abstract a lot. Let's just talk about me and you, not us. I'll talk about me, and you hear this from you. Because there's consequences of not following this whole bucket theory and the whole give and take, or the circle, whatever you want to call it. Isolation, loneliness, you don't want that. When you don't give, when you're not generous, when you're not compassionate, when you're not patient for other people, you're isolating yourself and you're burning bridges, and you know it. You can look at times when you can look at times when you could have done this and didn't, and there was isolation, maybe from a person, from a group. So over time, you may find yourself wondering, why don't I have where are my friends? I don't have a lot of that strong support group that I can call on that David talks about. I don't have people that would take up for me when I'm not in the room, Well, you need to think about it. And what am I doing for other people? I talked about bitterness earlier, bitterness and resentment and regret. If you always expect something in return before you're going to give it, no, what you got? You've never done anything for me. You might say that, but you think it. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed before anything happens. And that brings bitterness. You start believing people are selfish and unfair. You're believing they're selfish and unfair, when in truth, you haven't planted any seeds. You haven't put your hand out there. Last night we were at Outback, and they had hockey over here, and then they had a playoff game over here. But over here there was a TV right above this guy's head in my line of sight. Big guy, big mean looking African American guy. Not that matters, but I thought I would paint the picture for you. So I kept looking over there, and finally I looked him eye to eye and said, "Hey, I just want you to know, I'm not mean mugging you here. I'm watching the game over your head." And he laughed. He thought that was hilarious. He said, "I saw you look over here." But I wanted him to know that I reached out. And this is not me being noble or caring or giving or anything. I'm just, for example, I engaged this guy. Well, we had a great conversation. We ended up putting it over here, so I quit looking his way. But he told me a story. He almost died. I mean, he hasn't even been in public for like 5 or 6 months because he has been in the hospital and almost died. And the fact that I reached out, I got to hear that story. And we bonded. When we left, man, we fist bumped. I gave him a pat on the back. All right. I did nothing noble. I did nothing that deserves a pat on the back. But I engaged. When you are bitter and resentful, thinking, I'm not reaching out till somebody reaches out to me, you're costing yourself something and you don't even know what it is. I'm not saying speak to everybody in public. No. I'm just saying, if you're waiting for everyone else to give to you before you give back, you got a dry bucket. You're going to need it at some point. Also, emotionally, if you're not doing these things, if you're not giving mercy, grace, patience, humility, all of these things, you're not building emotional resilience, because you can't outgive. You can't. Now that is Southern Baptist there. You can't outgive because you get something back every time. But if you don't practice these things, These small failures, when somebody lets you down, they feel like they're so much bigger because you're not in the practice of doing this. And you're going to crumble emotionally because every setback is huge because you haven't built those small building blocks. And you're emotionally weak. And everything hurts your feelings. Everything gets you all stirred up. And then you got so many missed opportunities. When you don't give these things, you're not getting anything back, but also you miss all the opportunities that come from goodwill. Everything you give gives back. It's that feeling. No one else may feel it, but you'll feel it. And there's so much to be said for feeling good about yourself, and especially if you don't have to. I mean, if you have $1 billion and you give away, you put 20 in the offering plate or give a homeless guy something, whatever. It still makes you feel good if you don't have to. But I think the biggest thing you have when you don't give all of these things, you don't invest in all of these things, all these buckets, you're going to have regret. Life moves so fast. And at the end, people look back and it's not the things they did they regret, it's the things they didn't do. It could be the kindness they withheld, the words they didn't say, the people that they loved that they didn't tell. I have said many times when someone will bring up someone from my past, I will tell them, look, I love that guy. I love being around him. I really, and I don't know that he knows that. When you see him again, will you let him know? Because I'll never see him again. See, that's regret. Failing to live with grace and compassion and reason and humility and all these things, it's going to leave you with regret about relationships, things that you could have done, and the life you could have built. Now, this is heavy, I get it, but also practically, you're going to need these things back. And if you don't give it, that bitterness and regret it's going to bite you. Yep. So how do you get started? How do you get started? Yeah, Dave, you said all this. I believe it. Oh, my goodness. You're so serious today. Just start giving. Small, a little bit every day. And you probably already have. You just don't realize it. It's like the purple car theory. You got things coming up constantly. I can do that. I can give a kind word. I can give a smile. I can give a thumbs up. Just start doing it small. Yeah, and you can keep up with it if you want, little hash marks or whatever, a kind word, a dollar here, buy somebody a meal, an encouraging word. A lot of these things are free. And then, if you need to look at stuff to reinforce this, there's a bunch of different books or things you can do. There's daily encouragements. There's all kinds of stuff online. But also, you probably know somebody that's really good at this. When I said certain things, Joe does that all the time. Or so-and-so's always smiling. They always seem happy. What's up with that? Maybe you should hang around them. Find out. And I think you should challenge yourself. Pick some buckets. And this is just, put it somewhere. I'm putting it up here because I put a lot of stuff on dry erase boards. But what is it? All right. I'm pretty good at generosity and compassion. Mercy and grace. Oh, patience. Ooh, I need to have a patience bucket. I need to have a humility bucket. And label it. I need to work on my patience and my humility. All right? I'm going to consciously think when I'm about to blow it, I'm going to think about that. I'm going to be more patient. When I'm thinking down about somebody or I'm a little better than that person, okay, stop. I got to work on that bucket. I think that'll help you. And that will just bring things to the forefront, make you think about it. Because if you think about it, you'll do it. But remember, you don't want to wait until you feel like doing something. You don't want to wait until someone else does it, and that's your trigger to do it. Do it first. You give first. This whole thing, filling these buckets, it's about acting. And taking a feeling and putting action to it, not waiting for everything to be perfect. When everything goes right, then I will. Those times will never come. So, deep topic today. I know, I feel it. Randy and Gary, I hope you are crying right now because I've got through to your hard hearts over there in Eastern Kentucky. I'm just kidding. But I appreciate your time. Please hit me up at dave@otalks.com or david@otalks.com. Let me know what you think about this. I promise I'll be back to the booger jokes and the crude humor very soon. Next podcast probably. But I appreciate your support. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging on. But most of all, thanks for O-Talking with Dave.